people like me. You need people like me so you can point your f***ing fingers and say, that's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
Welcome to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news. Ow!
Okay, we'll start with this. Another look at the upcoming Evelyn Bermudez versus Valle light flyweight title fight. What brought it into fruition? There are two other champions in the minimum weight division where Valle holds two alphabet titles of her own. Why is she moving upstairs? Why is she not fighting them? Why is she not fighting Senicia Estrada? Why is she not fighting Tina Hrgovic? Well, when it comes to Senicia Estrada, she very recently parted ways with Golden Boy Promotions. She's fighting under the Top Rank banner now. I don't think Valle wants to have to go to Top Rank for that fight, and in order to have it, she would have to. She'd have to go to Top Rank. I don't think she wants to do that. Comes to Germany's own WBC minimum weight champion, Tina Hrgovic. Why isn't Valle fighting her? Well, for starters, it's been a long time since Tina Hrgovic had a fight. She is set to return to action in the near future, before this year is out. But for a unification match, it would be less than ideal for Tina to go into a unification match with Yokasta, having not seen action in such a long time. She may have beaten Valle before, some years ago, but under those circumstances, it would be less than ideal for Tina to go straight into a unification match with Yokasta, who's already seen action 3 times this year. Whereas for Tina, it's been over a year since she had a fight. Tack on that, in all likelihood, Valle would want the rematch to take place in her neck of the woods, Costa Rica. It's not happening. I just so happen to have come across a bit of inside intel that the wheels are already in motion to do a unification match between Tina Hrgovic and Senicia Estrada in either the first or second quarter of next year. That being said, that's why Yokasta's not fighting them. That's why she's not unifying titles with the other two minimum weight champions. That's why she's moving up the light flyweight to take on Evelyn Bermudez. A dangerous fight. Unbeaten unified light flyweight champion Evelyn Bermudez of Argentina, who sports a professional record of 17 wins with no losses, 1 draw. 6 knockouts. To Valle's 26 wins, 2 losses, no draws. 9 knockouts. Risky business. Very risky business for Valle, moving up to light flyweight for this fight. The chance to become a 2-division unified champion. Can she do it? Against Evelyn Bermudez. She's up against a younger fighter, about 4 years younger, a little bit bigger. Punch for punch, I'd say that Evelyn Bermudez is a harder puncher than Valle is. She's certainly more acclimated to light flyweight than Yokasta will be. It's what Evelyn Bermudez has working for her ahead of this fight. She's got a bit of size, bit of youth, and punching power. What's Valle got working for her? Well, I think she's a better boxer than Evelyn Bermudez. Better in terms of form and technique, footing, balance, shot selection. Evelyn Bermudez is a very formidable fighter, but in terms of technique, she often loses form. She'll shoot the 1-2, the straight 1-2 from the outside coming in, close the gap on her opponent, but once she's mid-range to inside, things get very chippy, very messy. Whereas Valle, she exhibits better form and better coordination. I think she's a better combination puncher than Evelyn Bermudez is, with better feet. She's a better combination puncher, even if she's not as strong as Evelyn. I don't actually think that Yokasta can put a dent. I don't think she can hurt Evelyn. I don't think she can outmuscle her, but she can perhaps out-hustle her, outbox her. As Evelyn Bermudez would be the puncher, and Valle, at least in this fight, she would be the boxer. Better coordinated boxer with the better feet. You oftentimes see Evelyn Bermudez compromise defense for offense as she's attempting to lay into her opponent. There are many countering opportunities there for a capable enough fighter, a capable enough boxer. Can exploit them. They're fast enough, and it just so happens I think Valle is just a tad bit faster and certainly more defensible than Evelyn Bermudez.
Her punches are.
Compared to Evelyn Bermudez, Yokasta Valle's punches are shorter, sharper, and more defensible. I think she will have a speed advantage in this fight.
You know, Yokasta Valle fight by fight has been showing a lot of improvement under the watchful eye of Coach G, a recent addition to her corner.
She has been looking sharp, looking the part, showing improvement.
And what Yokasta's team likely figure is that while Evelyn Bermudez is a formidable fighter, she's also very crude.
She's an unbeaten fighter, an unbeaten champion. She's never been beaten before, Evelyn. But how many fighters with good mobility, good feet,
Good coordination, good movement, keeping that head off center, making it difficult for Evelyn to deliver her power shots.
how many fighters like that has Evelyn fought?
This is Yokasta Valle's out to defeat Evelyn Bermudez and take those 2 alphabet titles from her. What she does after that, I don't know. Does she keep them and campaign as a light flyweight moving forward, or does she move back down to minimum weight?
It's a little bit political down there.
Didn't used to be, but it is now.
Will Evelyn Bermudez prove to be too strong and too durable for Yokasta Valle? Does Yokasta's reach exceed her grasp? We'll find out later on this month on the undercard of Prograis versus Zapata when Yokasta Valle attempts to become a 2-division unified champion.
I think there's a very good chance you'll see it next. I mean, for AJ, he's set to start his camp really at the turn of the year. So he's looking to fight in March. So we look how Dillian gets through if he wins. Do we go straight to Whyte against AJ, or do we do that in the summer in the stadium? I'm happy to go straight into it, but you know, we've got to speak to AJ's training team, see how Dillian Whyte comes through. But it's definitely a focus to make AJ against Dillian Whyte if he's victorious.
I can't stress this enough. I don't want Anthony Joshua's next fight to be against Dillian Whyte.
It's not that they can't do a rematch at some point next year. They can do a rematch.
If Tyson Fury can fight a guy who he's already beat 2 times, a 3rd time before this year is out, then I'm not against Anthony Joshua fighting Dillian again at some point next year. I just don't want that to be his very next fight.
Get him Zile Zhang. Get him Otto Valine.
Work it out. But I'd be lying to you if I told you that I have a hankering to see a second fight between Dillian and Anthony.
Not right now, I don't.
This upcoming weekend, Dillian Whyte is going to attempt to rebound off the knockout loss to Tyson Fury with unbeaten American up-and-comer Jermaine Franklin, a young guy with an unblemished record who, while having an unblemished record, has not competed at the same level as Dillian Whyte. Dillian doesn't get enough credit for this, you know.
He's got one of the better resumes of any top 10 heavyweight in the heavyweight division today. He's been in there with practically everybody.
Anthony Joshua, Robert Helenius, Derek Chisora 2 times, Joseph Parker, Oscar Rivas,
Alexander Povetkin 2 times.
Tyson Fury, and this weekend, unbeaten Jermaine Franklin.
Dillian Whyte has since enlisted the aid of veteran trainer and former world champion Buddy McGirt.
And Buddy McGirt does have a way of bringing out the best in a fighter, the individual fighter. He's not trying to reinvent the wheel with a guy and not trying to give him a complete overhaul. He seems to be able to sharpen,
improve upon what the fighter's already good at.
We'll see what version of Dillian Whyte shows up this weekend. Dillian Whyte, who says he's no doubt that he will punish Jermaine Franklin when the pair meet on Saturday at the Wembley Arena. As an undefeated heavyweight, Franklin is a dangerous guy, but I'm going to teach him quite a few lessons on Saturday night. Most importantly, I'm going to teach him how to lose.
Because he doesn't know how to yet.
Is Jermaine Franklin a potential banana skin for Dillian Whyte now that he's on the rebound? I'll say this much. This fight intrigues me a lot more than, say, the Daniel Dubois versus Trevor Bryan fight did. I went into that fight quite confident that Daniel Dubois would dispatch Trevor Bryan. Really wasn't very good.
Yeah, I was confident Daniel would knock that guy out, and he did. He made short work of him, made it look easy.
This fight with Dillian and Jermaine, there does seem to be a bit more air of spontaneity. Anything can happen. It would be catastrophic for Dillian if he suffers another loss, the 4th loss of his career.
His first loss was to Anthony Joshua some years ago. Second came at the hands of Alexander Povetkin. More recently, his 3rd came at the hands of Tyson Fury.
Every single one of those losses was a knockout loss, and every single one of those knockouts was off an uppercut.
I think Dillian Whyte is a formidable fighter. I think he's better than he's given credit for, but I also think This guy's a sucker for an uppercut.
This is kryptonite. The guy's a sucker for an uppercut.
This is a can't-lose fight for Dillian Whyte. It might seem like a blanket statement to say that the pressure is on.
You know, it's boxing. There's always a level of pressure involved.
And you never want to lose, but at certain points in a fighter's career, a loss doesn't hurt too much. Dillian Whyte is not some young, unbeaten up-and-comer or some young fighter.
Jermaine Franklin can afford to lose this fight to Dillian a lot more than Dillian can afford to lose this fight to Jermaine.
Dillian Whyte is in his mid-30s. He's lost 3 times already, been stopped 3 times already.
He needs to get back to his winning ways, win big, show improvement. The rest of Dillian Whyte's career is on the other side of this fight.
This fight with Jermaine Franklin. Jermaine Franklin, who saw action earlier this year in May against Rodney Moore.
Scored a 5th-round TKO stoppage. For the most part, Jermaine Franklin's level of competition has been pedestrian at best. The most recognizable names on his CV are journeymen like Rydell Booker and Jerry Forrest. Familiar names, but not world-class fighters, not world-class operators.
There are questions. Has Dillian Whyte's punch resistance started to wane? Has it started to go? In truth, I don't think his punch resistance was ever all that great to begin with, though at the same time, look at the guys that have stopped him.
These are not your run-of-the-mill guys. You know, Anthony Joshua, Alexander Povetkin, those 2 guys are knockout artists, bona fide knockout artists with high KO percentages. You think about Tyson Fury. Tyson Fury stopped Deontay Wilder 2 times.
Made Derek Chisora quit in his corner in their second fight. These are the only guys that have victories over Dillian Whyte. World-class guys. World-class operators. Is that Jermaine Franklin?
Not up until this point. He's not proven at that level.
If you're gonna make it to the big fights and the big nights, you have to be able to beat guys like this. Dillian Whyte has to show that he's still got enough left in the tank that he can make it past an unproven up-and-comer like a Jermaine Franklin, because if he can't...
He's got to win. He's got to win in good fashion.
He's got to.
We'll talk more about the fight later on in the week as the fight date approaches. And just in keeping with the theme of heavyweight news, reigning Unified Ring Magazine and lineal heavyweight champion Alexander Usyk is back in training today with his eyes on a potential undisputed heavyweight world title fight versus Tyson Fury in early 2023.
There have been a lot of distractions.
A lot of Usyk versus Wilder talk, Fury versus Joshua talk, when, by all rights, the only fight that makes sense here and now for Alexander Usyk, and the only fight here and now that makes sense for Tyson Fury, is the fight between them. The fight for the undisputed heavyweight world championship.
I mean, seriously, what the fuck?
The IBF very recently ordered Alexander Usyk to enter into negotiations with Philippe Hrgovic, but Usyk's handlers are focused on Fury, not worried about IBF order for Hrgovic.
Yet another potential stumbling block for what's supposed to be the undisputed heavyweight championship of the world.
Alexander Usyk's handlers are not concerned with a recent mandatory order to face Philippe Hrgovic. Usyk, who holds the IBF, WBO, IBO, and WBA heavyweight titles, is coming off back-to-back decision wins over Anthony Joshua. He wants to pursue an undisputed fight with WBC champion Tyson Fury in early 2023, but the IBF recently issued an order for a mandatory fight between Usyk and Hrgovic, and Eddie Hearn, co-promoter for Hrgovic, has asked for an immediate purse bid. Usyk's promoter is not worried about a Fury fight being derailed by mandatory obligations. At this stage, I can anticipate that it will not influence the undisputed anyhow. Usyk's promoter, Alexander Krasiuk, told Sky Sports, Fury is staying busy with a voluntary title defense scheduled for December 3rd against Derek Chisora at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium.
All of a sudden, the IBF wants to order their mandatory. Are they even next in the rotation?
The IBF used to be regarded as the only straight shooter amongst alphabet organizations, at least in recent memory. In spite of their sketchy history and their sketchy past, for a long time, it seemed like they cleaned up their act, and now there are noticeable inconsistencies
that suggest otherwise.
Preferential treatment and favoritism in regards to which fights actually get ordered and which fights don't. I mean, why are they ordering this fight?
Why now?
Why Philippe Hrgovic? Filip Hrgovic, comparatively, has not been the IBF's mandatory challenger at heavyweight as long as Bakram Murtazaliev has been the IBF's mandatory challenger at junior middleweight. And I don't see them bothering Jermell Charlo,
Who's only fought once this year.
We expect his next fight to be for the undisputed, so most likely it will take place in the Middle East, Krasiuk revealed. However, promoter Ben Shalom of Boxer would love to help Usyk make his fights in the UK. We think his fights should be in the United Kingdom. We'd love to work with Alexander, and that's something that we are speaking about, Shalom told Sky Sports. He wants to fight in the UK. He knows that the UK is probably a very strong market. We've seen him over here so many times. We'd love to have him over in the UK, really build his message and build his following, and have him on the home side, because he's always come over here, whether it was against Tony Bellew or Derek Chisora, and he's always been the away fighter. I think the British fans have really bought into Alexander Usyk and his personality over the past few years, and everything that he's done in Ukraine is inspirational as well. I think the UK can really get behind that. He can be a star in the UK. He can be the home fighter for the first time, and obviously he's a unified champion at the moment and one of the biggest stars in the sport.
Ben Shalom is looking to beef up his stable of fighters with this division's unified champion.
He wants to bring Alexander Usyk into the fray. It's the funniest thing because they signed Michael Hunter to what was reported to be a multi-fight deal, but due to the Huey Fury fight's collapse, they have since cut him loose.
You couldn't get fights for Michael Hunter. You're going to get fights for Alexander Usyk.
Alexander Usyk, who's currently under orders by way of the IBF to satisfy his mandatory challenger. It's funny that the IBF aren't pressuring Errol Spence Jr. to satisfy his mandatory challenger.
Since becoming champion over 4 years ago with them, he's only satisfied one.
Carlos Ocampo fight. Errol has had 2 separate unification matches since then, and at no point did the IBF impede that process for him. They didn't impede that process for his PBC stablemate, Jermell Charlo, who had 2 separate undisputed attempts without any interruptions from the IBF, who did in fact have a mandatory challenger in the queue, Bakram Murtazaliev, as of 2019.
They didn't bother those guys, so why are they bothering Alexander?
I mean, think about it. Jermell Charlo first procured the red belt in 2020 in the bubble against Jason Rosario. By the time he won that belt, Bakram Murtazaliev was already their mandatory challenger. And
when he won the belt, they didn't order him to fight Bakram Murtazaliev. He goes into the undisputed title fight with Brian Castano for the first time. It scored a draw.
Still no order from the IBF.
After the fight has scored a draw, they go into the rematch earlier this year.
Still no order from the IBF.
And that's the only fight Jermell Charlo had this entire year. But still, no order from them. They're not bothering him, but they're bothering Alexander Usyk while they're trying to negotiate the undisputed heavyweight title fight.
You don't find that at all suspicious? Needless to say that the IBF, they're a bit inconsistent. At least these days they are. And they're not the straight shooters that they used to be. I hope reconciliation can be found, and this doesn't impede the undisputed process.
According to Alexander Krasiuk, it won't, but we'll see.
Is Filip Hrgovic willing to step aside?
He should.